Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to episode 8 of Digital Law News. So this is a weekly news update that me and Peter Wright do on issues based around digital technology and cybersecurity and things like data protection, things that we deal with on a daily basis at Digital Law. So just a bit of background in case people don't know, Digital Law is a small law firm based in the UK which specialises in data protection, cybersecurity and anything to do with technology matters. So I'll just pass over to Peter to talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Laura, and hello everyone. Yeah, we'll be bringing you a flavour of our discussions at our weekly team meetings via these discussions, which we hope you will enjoy, a little bit of the insight. So we're just literally looking at stories in the news and giving you a little bit of comment and analysis. So we can now flick through to the first story.
Yeah, great. And that's just some contact information there in case you have any questions. So the first story today is regarding the Amazon speakers, so the Alexa. So we spoke a little bit about this last week about the Google speakers, but this one's about the Amazon ones. So there has recently been Alexa bug which could have exposed voice history to hackers. So Alexa web services had bugs on their devices which hackers could have exploited to grab target's entire voice history. So they have now patched these flaws, but the vulnerability could have actually exposed and yielded profile information such as users' home addresses and things like that.
Indeed, and this isn't the first time that Amazon's Echo speaker has had this problem with regards to them having taken recordings from their speakers. Yeah. Retaining them sometimes for prolonged periods of time, using those recordings potentially for the purposes of targeted advertising and marketing, and even using them just for the purpose of then continuing to refine the way that the service operates. And as the volume of Amazon Echo speakers increases, and there are new versions being released all the time, and these are getting more and more common in people's homes, there is always the risk that when you hear a story like this, it doesn't help but make you think, can we really take their assurances at face value with regards to how these things are collecting data? As you say, Laura, we were looking at a story only on smart speakers last week as well with regards to Google.
Yeah, I think last week's was regarding was it something regarding that it was also like always listening to what you're saying rather than just listening out for the activation code?
Exactly. In that instance, it actually ended up picking up the fact that an individual, their fire alarm went off while they were cooking in the kitchen, and then their Google sent them a notification saying your fire alarm appears to be going off. Again, they turned around and went, we've corrected this, we've got rid of the bug that meant that it did this in the first place. But that seems to me to be a very specific bug that picks up things and sends you targeted notifications about specific alarms taking place in the vicinity. And in this instance, it's the fact that a user's entire voice history could, in theory, be targeted here. You've got to remember that the files that the Echo puts together are not just files of when someone has a user interaction with the device. It is where the user has trained the device to understand the voice. The device will look to try and understand frequent commands that it's asked so that it provides the right information. So if you're constantly asking it, what's the weather like in a certain place, it's that it can give you that information when you ask for it, or if you're asking for a certain radio station, it will give you that radio station without serving you the wrong music or the wrong station. And of course, the issue here as well is that if all of that personal data is on there, it could include things like your home address. It could, if it's been synced with your Amazon account, there could be details on there with regards to your purchase history. Indeed, the Amazon Echo, it does tell you, it will actually give you a notification if it says, we have a delivery on our way to you today. the thing flashes a different color until you say, Alexa, give me a notification, and it then will tell you whatever the thing is. So there is a high degree of synchronicity between the Echo and your Amazon account. All of that information potentially being vulnerable is a significant cause for concern. And it's all well and good that they say, don't worry, we've dealt with the problem. Well, of course they'd say that. They're a publicly traded company with investors. Of course they're going to say everything's fine. No need to look to see here. Please move on. But it does give cause for concern about the way the system is designed and the fact that persistently these sorts of things are coming up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's particularly important at the moment because people obviously have a lot of these smart speakers and things in the houses, and when a lot of people are working from home, you kind of never know what's going to be heard and what's going to be recorded, and then what's going to be used in the future to like.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right, because you've then got more people working from home, being overheard, might not have thought the fact that this thing is going to be listening to the things that they say throughout the day. And you've also got the fact that as our homes become more IoT friendly with more smart technology, everything from smart kettles to smart fridges, which might be listening, might be using an Amazon Echo as a voice interface. So you'd say to the Amazon Echo, Alexa, please dim the lights. Alexa, please make me a cup of tea. Then more and more data is therefore going to be funneled through the system. And if there are vulnerabilities on there, that means it is a growing cause of concern, given that the Echo becomes a more integral part of the home in handling and fielding all those sorts of queries.
Yeah, definitely. Right, so moving on to our next story. So this is one that we did cover last week as well, and we have recently collaborated with Anson Evaluate to produce a webinar on this. But this is about the EUUS Privacy Shield and how that was struck down a couple of weeks ago by the Schrems 2 decision. So now it's saying people who have political interests and politicians themselves are now talking about plans to ponder an enhancement of the EUUS Privacy Shield framework. But a lot of people are having worries about this, and a tech lawyer in particular has said that attempting to patch up the agreement would end up being a case of different wallpaper, same cracks. It would be challenged in the same view to come up with a privacy shield arrangement which was not vulnerable to being struck down once again.
Indeed. So the issue here is that following the decision of the Court of Justice of the European Union a couple of weeks back, again, we've got politicians talking about coming up with a successor to the EUUS Privacy Shield, which has been struck down and can no longer be relied upon when you're looking at due diligence to cover off the sharing of personal data of EU citizens with servers and infrastructure and any organisation or third party in the United States. Now, by trying to sort of breathe life back into the system to try and keep it going, the quote there of different wallpaper, same cracks does ring true, because the fundamental problem here is the lack of an adequacy decision from the European Union in relation to the data protection laws and privacy laws in the United States. And this is caused by the mass bulk data surveillance of personal data of EU citizens in the United States. This is under something called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which means as far as the United States is concerned, the personal data of anyone from outside the US is fair game. And therefore, we know that when personal data from those located outside the US moves to the US, so if for example, it could be Amazon with their Echo we were just talking about, it could be Facebook, it could be Nike, who knows. The point is that data is vulnerable to the surveillance carried out by the NSA, the various different programs that they have to look at the personal data of foreign nationals. And you can dress up the Privacy Shield with a new name, you can try and beef it up, you can give it more rigorous controls in theory, but it's not going to get around the fact that those security surveillance programs remain in place, and they're not going to be backed off anytime soon, given the general unstable nature of the global geopolitical situation, meaning that mass surveillance of foreign nationals by US security services is going to be an ongoing fact of life for the foreseeable future. So you can call it Privacy Shield, or in the meantime, while the Privacy Shield is being looked at, you rely on standard contractual clauses in third-party contracts. But even then, a company, a Facebook and Nike, can make that assurance and can sign a contract, but it doesn't really know the nature of the bulk surveillance that's taking place either. So it can't really give accurate warranties to say, ah, yes, our data is safe and isn't being looked at, because the reality is it can be. So until this problem is adequately dealt with, and I think the only way you could have possibly dealt with that is something like a free trade deal, like the one that was originally looking to be negotiated between the US and the European Union, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. That might have resolved this. Who knows, because the text of that agreement was kept highly confidential. But that might have resolved this, but certainly I can't see any sort of, or daughter of Privacy Shield being any more effective than the preceding scheme has been. You can dress it up, you can put wallpaper on it, you can give it a new name, some new branding. It's still not going to get through the intractable problem of the lack of equivalence between data protection laws in the United States compared to those in the European Union.
Yeah, definitely. And if you do want any more information about this, we did, like I said, we did a webinar on this last week, and that's just been uploaded onto our YouTube channel, the Anson Evaluate YouTube channel, and the Anson Evaluate website today. So if you are interested in that, I can always send the link out to anybody who is interested as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Moving on to his next story. So this is about a class action that is currently taking place, which has been filed in Amsterdam. So the non-profit organisation, the Privacy Collective, has accused two tech giants, Salesforce and Oracle, of breaching GDPR in relation to the misuse of consumers' personal data through their third-party cookies, which are used for dynamic ad pricing services. So this is a £10 million lawsuit, and as I said, it was filed in Amsterdam, and there's going to be another filing of this in the UK in High Court of London later this month.
Indeed, and the key thing here is that with the advent of GDPR and following a key case a couple of years ago that involved Google, it is now possible for civil actions like this. It's a lot easier for them to go through. Anyone who followed the labyrinthine and indeed snail-like progress of the group litigation action in the UK in relation to the breach of the Morrisons payroll, whereby affected employees joined a group action, that took years to get anywhere. And because it applied to the old law, the old Data Protection Act and the pre-Google settlements, it meant that you were still applying the old common law logic of saying, well, where's the loss here? And therefore each claimant had to prove that they had sustained a loss through their personal data insofar as it was payroll data. So you're looking at name, address, bank account information, tax information, pretty heavy duty sensitive information having been breached, but you still had to go quite a long way to be able to say to the court, I have sustained a loss and this is what that loss is. So the court could then decide, do we agree there's been a breach? And if so, what should the value of any damages be? Post the Google case, you instead find that a nominal figure can be awarded in relation to a civil action like this. So therefore, the idea of filing the class action means, right, we can bring in a large cohort of people who will not have to go to the point of then proving individual loss. It would just be they join the class action. The court would then look and say, right, we will make a nominal payment of so many €1,000 or so many £1,000 per claimant in relation to their data having been breached. So in theory, it will be a much more straightforward process for these individuals to make this class action, and it will therefore be a matter of waiting to see with bated breath. Does this class action proceed comparatively smoothly? Does it get enmeshed in the slow-running procedural natures, particularly of how group litigation tends to progress in the UK? And having looked at that and the speed of any potential resolution here, it's then going to be a matter of, well, what actual value is then awarded by the court, be it in Amsterdam or in London. Interestingly, there have been class actions in relation to British Airways and Marriott as well. The minute now that there is a major data protection breach, you see the notices go up on Facebook and social media saying, join the class action here. But we have yet to see proper public terms of the settlements of any of these sorts of class actions. So let's see, therefore, what happens here with Salesforce and Oracle. I think we'll be coming back to this story quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Probably not as often as some of the other stories, because like you said, it does take a while, but we will be hearing about it in the future.
Indeed, it's not going to be weekly, but I'd like to think that every couple of months this would come back. What I hope isn't the case is that we're still talking about Salesforce and Oracle in 4 years' time and it hasn't gone anywhere. Yeah,
definitely. So moving on to our next one. So this is about Instagram and their data retention. So a researcher recently looked into this and he downloaded an app on his phone, I think it was, and where you could basically inquire about what an app stores about you in terms of data. So from this, he found out that Instagram was keeping deleted photos and messages on their systems for more than a year after their deletion. So obviously this comes into like the right to be forgot and erasure under GDPR. And once again, as it's a Facebook owned app, they have said that they have fixed the issue, but thank the researcher for finding it for them.
That common story again. Yes, we've fixed it. Nothing to see here. Please move on. I mean, this is absolutely fascinating. I actually deleted the Facebook apps from my phones and tablets many years ago because they notoriously, they aren't just there so you can access Facebook easily. They are looking at the device that the app has been downloaded onto. So they'll be looking at your photos, they'll be looking at your text messages, your emails, and all of the other data that is on there, even down to the phone calls that are made, the cell towers that your device might be connecting to, the Wi-Fi networks, the usage, all of this data. You can imagine these devices generate a vast amount of data. These apps are designed to try and access as much of that information as they possibly can. And this is an example where that can end up the rock meeting the immovable object of GDPR. And in this instance, of course, as you quite rightly say, Laura, the right to be forgotten means that if you've deleted something, you expect that data to have gone, when in this scenario, Instagram has actually ended up retaining these images and messages on its system. Not just for, you know, if they could turn around and say, oh yes, we still got it on our systems because our backup system has kept it, therefore it wouldn't be fully deleted for a couple of months. You could at least say, look, our system is slow, but it's working towards it being fully deleted. But the key thing here is more than a year after the deletion, they still had the photos and messages.
Yeah.
I love the way it says that this was a huge bungle. I'd say it was a bit more than a bungle. I mean, it's a full-on failure to properly implement a proper regime around data retention and data deletion. You know, the user is under the impression their information's been deleted when this proves that is far from the case. And can we believe the statement that then comes out and says, don't worry, this has been fixed, we've done a new update, it's all fine? Well, I'm not convinced, I'm afraid. This is another reason why I removed the Facebook app many, many years ago from my devices, and I'd be inclined to do the same with Instagram. Sometimes it's easier just to access these apps through the web interface rather than sometimes going through the app, because the apps are so very invasive.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like this is becoming more of a common occurrence, that it seems like every week there seems to be a story where Facebook, Instagram, Twitter have found something and they've fixed it, but there's no evidence as to it, they've fixed it.
Indeed, this is only the 8th week we've been doing these webinars, Laura, and you're seeing the pattern emerging in terms of how these guys tend to respond when these sorts of issues come up. The other thing that I think we need to point out actually is our link there is to The Sun, and that's showing the fact that this is actually a story that's relative of national mass media news coverage. Many of our links our viewers and listeners will have seen that we're very often going into the specialist press, TechCrunch and Wired and things. But no, here we are with the Sun newspaper actually covering this, because it appreciates the fact that so many millions of people are using and enjoying Instagram, that really they should know about this, and to be honest, they should be concerned.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on to our next story. So this is one from the NCSC. So this is about scams. So it's very common recently that criminals are using rich and famous people to lure online victims. So in the past 4 months alone, the National Cybersecurity Centre have actually removed 300,000 URLs linking to investment scams with fake celebrity endorsements. And a lot of these include faces such as Richard Branson and Martin Lewis. And I know we were talking about this earlier. You do see Martin Lewis linked to quite a few of these, because obviously he is talking about money. He gives advice on these type of matters. So you kind of see Martin Lewis on it and think, right, this is good.
Yeah. It's funny, since we looked at this story, Laura, I went online to look, and there are still banner adverts up there today referring to the new celebrity they're using is Pierce Brosnan, saying, yes, banks hate it that I share news about this this inflation busting investment scheme, you know, as if Pierce Brosnan would endorse that. The other popular one is, I think they get Bear Grylls is frequently featured as talking about this. And it's incredible that the scammers just lift a picture from somewhere, but because you've got the picture and some clickbaitable text that says, look, you know, someone credible, Martin Lewis, Richard Branson, they're saying that this is a scheme that the banks, they don't want you to know about it. You end up, you know, it's trying to lure the unwitting user to end up clicking on it, and then who knows what you could end up seeing. These things are very often designed to encourage you to enter personal data. They'll probably have highly invasive cookies alone on the pages that you might end up going through to, that would slow down your machine and fill it up with malware. But at their worst, if you end up then following these scams, you could end up thinking you're investing money in a surefire bet, as endorsed by Martin Lewis, when in fact it's just a scam. We aren't even looking at a particularly sophisticated scam or pyramid scheme. It's just transferring your savings potentially to scam artists. Yeah. So I think it is a good thing that the National Cybersecurity Centre is trying to get these, you know, right. It could just say, oh, we're circulating information about how people shouldn't click on this, but no, they are actually having the links taken down. But this isn't, it's an important thing to bear in mind in terms of how the internet works. Just because you might see one of these adverts on a website doesn't mean that the website itself you're looking at has endorsed the advert. It's based, very often these scam adverts are served on you as a internet user based on your user history, what you've clicked on before, or based on the promotions being run by whoever is running that cookie banner. So you might see a banner like this on a blog, or you might see it on an e-commerce site or on eBay or something. The site you've seen it on has no control usually over the nature of these ads that are being served on you, and it usually has no knowledge, for that matter, of the sort of ads that you might end up seeing. So therefore it is a difficult exercise for the NCSC to go after the agencies that are serving this and to say, you've got to take these things down, they are scams, and therefore they are a danger to the public.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a very good point. So moving on to our last two now. So these are both from the ICO. So the ICO have issued a statement, I think it was about 2 days ago, in response to the trial of the NHS Test and Trace app. So you might have heard that the app is now being tested. I'm not quite sure if it's in the UK or is it being trialed? I know it was being trialed. I can't remember the name of the place now.
It was being trialled on the Isle of Wight. That was when they were actually going to use it for properly being part of the test and trace scheme. I mean, you know, as it is, if you go and get a COVID test now, they will try and then trace the contacts that you've been in contact with if you test positive. But that was when they were going to try and use the app to actually be able to turn around and tell you, you have been in contact with someone who's tested positive. That app, tested in Isle of Wight, didn't work. But now they're looking at rolling it out just as a source of information and guidance to people, really, so they can download this thing. You know, if you think, oh, I'm starting to show symptoms, it might list, well, what are those symptoms? What should you do? How do you get a test? How do you talk about this with your friends and family? All these sorts of things. That's information that will be on the app, and they're just testing that in a few different towns and cities around the country, as far as I know. But without the more invasive use of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi to actually try and notify you if you've been in contact with someone who's tested. But the point here is that the ICO is trying to say, look, we have been in contact here with the relevant government departments, and they are giving advice in terms of making sure that this is properly audited, making sure it's decommissioned when no longer needed, for example, because if this thing was still gathering people's data in 4 years' time, by which point hopefully we can see COVID long in the rearview mirror, you wouldn't want that thing to still be around on people's phones collecting data, or having that data collected centrally on servers that the NHS might be using, for example.
Yeah, definitely, because I think that was one of the main worries that people were having, that yes, government might need this data right now and they need to use it to help the pandemic, but people were worried that their data would be used for long after for a different purpose. Right, so moving on to our last story. So this is also from the ICO, and in relation to the exam results that were released on Thursday and will be released again this Thursday. So the ICO were concerned as GDPR actually places restrictions on organisations making sole automated decisions that have a legal or similarly significant effect on individuals, such as like exam results, which can affect job opportunities, university applications and things like that. So Ofqual have actually said that now it wasn't just the algorithm alone that made the decision in terms of exam results. Teachers and exam board officers have actually been involved in these decisions, and obviously they released yesterday, I think, that they are going to be absolutely scrapping the algorithm altogether and just giving people their predicted grades anyway.
Indeed, and the fascinating thing here is that to look at some of the more hysterical elements of media coverage, you would think that it was the algorithm on its own had been deciding people's futures, when in fact it was only part of a system that may still have been fundamentally flawed. And I think we have to look at the outcomes in terms of the students that have gone through this. But the point here from the ICO is to say it wasn't just the algorithm on its own that was potentially having an impact on the results that students were receiving. It was also the fact that you were then taking into account predicted grades, results from mock examinations as well. So the algorithm was only one part of what was being used. GDPR in particular, it has certain passages that look at the use of algorithms being used solely to reach outcomes and decisions, and highlight certain concerns with regards to doing that. Though it is something we need to be mindful of. Increasingly, we are relying more and more on algorithms in terms of AI and machine learning in particular when it comes to our online habits, in terms of e-commerce, when it comes to even apps which rely then on an algorithm to serve different data to us, as happens with TikTok, for example. So it's actually quite important that they flagged up the fact that GDPR does look at this. And it is something that both developers and governments have to think about quite carefully when it comes to the increasing use of algorithms and machine learning in our day-to-day lives. Yeah,
definitely. So that was our last story for today. So we just want to remind people about our special offer that we actually have on at the moment. So this is for our GDPR compliance manual for legal practices. So this was initially brought out in 2018 when GDPR first came into force, and it was originally priced at £195, and now it is on a special offer for our listeners at £99. So this is around 50% off. You can get this in a digital copy and a hard copy just for an extra £5 for postage and packaging. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the manual, Peter?
Yes, so it contains things like forms and templates and checklists to take what GDPR says, and those that are familiar with GDPR know that it's great at telling you, you must achieve this standard, you must demonstrate compliance, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. And this very helpful compliance manual does do that. It has forms, as I say, templates, checklists, guidance on what practical compliance with GDPR really looks like. So it gives you examples of good practice. It also gives you examples of bad practice, so you can make sure you're not doing that. And it also, in particular, when you've got the hard copy there as well, we know that some firms like to have hard copies available so that you can then flick through and have tabs that you can go to that will, for example, flag up issues with regards to communications or IT or social media. You can flick through that information nice and quickly in the hard copy. While this version is designed for law firms, I must add that we have had quite a few copies that have been purchased by those who are running other professional practices, so things like accountants and also those in financial services, because a lot of the stuff we say in here applies to other heavily regulated sectors as well. So there's lots of what we think is good practical advice and guidance in there, and it is available there at that heavily reduced price. So please do feel free to get in touch with us and order your copy.
Yeah, so you can either drop us a line at admin@ansonevaluate.com or admin@digitallawuk.com, and one of us will be able to get back to you regarding that. So that is it for today's episode. Just a reminder, this is available on demand through our website, YouTube channel, and via podcast. So on Spotify, Apple Music, or any other podcast channel that you decide to listen to. So this will be live again next week on Tuesday at 4 p.m. And that's it. So thank you for listening. Thank you. Goodbye.